It is a little after 7 on Monday, April 5th, 2021. The time and place set aside for the meeting of the Montclair City Council. We will begin with our call to order. Madam City Clerk. Oh, I'm sorry. We've called to order invocation. Madam City Clerk, our invocation tonight?
Yes, tonight's invocation will be led by Elder Ray Ramirez of Montclair Christian Church, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilmember Lopez. And here is Mr. Ramirez.
Yes, I salute you in the name
Okay,
of the
go ahead.
God we trust.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I salute you in the name of the God we trust. The angel of the God we trust is with us. He will lead us to arrive Malta Island after this season of perilous risk under the inclemency of COVID storm. Island where refuge and survival in favor of God is found. Listen to residents of Montclair. Let us be united in the prayer for all first responders in our community, for the security of our policemen and women, for the safety of our firefighting forces, paramedics, EMT, and every technician as we thank God for their rescue team efforts. Bless them, oh God. We ask God for our heroic medical providers, doctors, nurses, and staff, disinfecting cleaning crews, for God to keep them in good health, free of contagious disease. Bless them, oh God. The essential workers in every occupation that bravely face the crowds to making first necessities available to all. Bless them, oh God. Let us all be in support of our governing leaders and personnel office officials. Oh God, we trust you lead us in this city council meeting tonight for your presence and wisdom and the planning and the resolutions of any conflict discussion for the final outcome to be pleasing to all. We depend and cry to the God we trust. Let us be light and example to other communities of how we face our struggles under the God we trust. For them who wonder, they will all know there is an almighty God in Montclair. Amen.
Amen. Councilmember Lopez.
Would you please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to our great flag?
I pledge
I
allegiance.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. Madam City Clerk, I would now entertain the roll call.
Councilmember Lopez,
Here.
Councilmember Martinez,
Here.
Councilmember Johnson,
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue,
Present?
Mayor Dutre.
Present, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, we can, Mayor.
And I apologize, I'm in family vacation today, so I'm out of town in a car right now, participating in this meeting. And as a result, I've asked Mayor Pro Tem Rue to preside. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad you could at least join us by the car. That brings us to item number 5, presentations. There are none this evening. Next item is item number 6, public comments. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments for items not on the agenda this evening?
I did not receive any advanced requests to speak under public comments. I have one request to speak for each public hearing and one request to speak on item D1, and it looks like there is a hand in the audience.
Okay, so the items are for the public hearing item and item number D1.
Yes, and it looks like Bruce Culp would like to speak on this time.
Okay. Mr. Culp.
Thank you, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay, just wanted to take a moment here to recognize a legend in the city employee family there, Xavier Mendez. I think he recently retired, and he put in a lot of years in our city, and volunteered for quite a number of years. And so I just wanted to publicly offer my thanks and gratitude to his many years of service. Xavier, I don't know if you're out there, but thank you so much. And I hope you have a great retirement. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. That brings us to the end of our public comment.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, we do have one more raised hand.
Okay, and whom would that be?
It is Mr. Tuan Nguyen.
Okay, Mr. Nguyen, welcome.
Thank you, Councilman Rue. Before I actually speak, I'd like to speak on one of the consent calendar item, D1, on the resolution, adoption of
Okay,
resolution.
I think what we would do, Mr. Nguyen, is I will ask that the item be pulled, which I had planned to do anyway, and then we would open up the public comment for that. Am I correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that is the procedure.
So would that be okay, Mr. Nguyen, to just wait until that time?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm unfamiliar with the process, so yeah, that's fine. Thank
Okay,
you.
no, that's okay. It can get, believe me, it can get confusing. Don't worry about it, sir.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with no more public comment, that brings us to item number 7. A first reading to consider ordinance number 21-995, amending section 8.36.090 of the Montclair Municipal Code to eliminate commercial truck parking on Brook Street and Palo Verde Street, and to consider setting a public hearing to consider adoption of the ordinance on Monday, April 19, 2021 at 7 p.m. Madam City Clerk, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And who will be presenting this item from, let me look, from staff, the city manager?
Oh, yes, Mayor Pro Tem Rue, I will be presenting the item. You will recall back at the March 1st, 2021 meeting of the City Council, this item was presented as a first reading for your introduction and consideration. The council at that time asked that the item be returned back to the Public Works Committee for reconsideration of the ordinance and a recommendation back to the City Council. The Public Works Committee had previously considered this item back in early 2020, and they recommended that it go forward. But in their second review, which occurred on March 18th, the Public Works Committee made the determination that they believe the ordinance should go forward, and their recommendation back to the City Council is that it be adopted. As you know, the proposed ordinance 21-995 would eliminate the current provision in the municipal code that allows commercial vehicles having a manufacturer's gross vehicle weight rating of 10,000 pounds or more from parking on Brook Street and Palo Verde Street, as well as other public streets in the city of Montclair. Back in 2006, the city attempted to implement a citywide ban related to commercial vehicles parking on our city streets. But in 2012, that ban was relaxed, and there was parking that was allowed to occur on the north side of Palo Verde Street between Central Avenue and Carrillo Street. And also back in 2006, parking was allowed for commercial vehicles on Brook Street between Ramona and Monte Vista Avenues. But over the last decade, the number of commercial vehicles illegally parking on city streets, both in the permitted areas and outside of the permitted areas, has increased, creating a number of regulatory issues for the city, including visual blight, traffic dangers such as site restrictions, long-term parking issues, on-street repairs to commercial vehicles, access and mobility issues, and complaints from residents. In fact, today we received a complaint from a resident regarding parking on Palo Verde Street, stating that the vehicles prevent her from having proper site access. That is in part because the vehicles are parking illegally on the opposite side of the street as opposed to the north side of the street where they have been required to park pursuant to the permit requirements. The fiscal impact in relation to the City Council's consideration of this particular item, there would be no discernible cost impact to the general fund if the council does adopt this ordinance. And staff recommends the City Council adopt the ordinance as proposed, and that they consider this introduction and first reading of the ordinance. And that they set a hearing on the second reading for the ordinance. I'm missing that page on my agenda.
April 19th, 2021.
Exactly.
7 p.m. Monday.
That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Do any of the members of the City Council have any questions before we take any public comment? The one question I have is, we had a gentleman who spoke at the one meeting on this. He talked about how this is his business, and at times he has to park on Palo Verde Street in order to have his truck nearby. He can't necessarily park it somewhere else. There's nothing nearby, and this is part of his business. Do we have a way to work with this gentleman?
We did, the gentleman, Mr. Squires, did attend the Public Works Committee meeting. He spoke with members of the Public Works Committee. And he is in attendance in the attendance list this evening, in case he wants to speak to the council on this item. We did indicate that there were a number of sites in the city of Montclair that provide parking for commercial vehicles off street. And so we referred him to those companies. In fact, I believe that we provided him a list of the outlets in Montclair that provide that alternative access. As you know, parking on urban and suburban streets by large commercial vehicles is generally a prohibited practice. The fact that it has been allowed in the city of Montclair for much of the last 15 years, including 10 years on Palo Verde Street, is an indication that the city has been flexible with these businesses, giving them an opportunity to at least accommodate and find alternative places to park. And we believe that it is now time to do that. Of course, it is in compliance with the city's general plan. As I indicated, very few urban and suburban cities allow for commercial vehicles with a gross weight of 10,000 pounds or more to use city streets for purposes of parking or storage, except on a very temporary basis. But again, he did attend the last meeting of the Public Works Committee, and he may have some comments he wants to address tonight.
So before we get into public comment, I'm sure he will, if he's on the line, would want to say something. In looking at this, we do have people who may have to park their trucks on the street for specific reasons. It's a home-based business, or maybe they're not able to get to one of these other facilities in the city or nearby. Do we have a list of facilities in the area, not just Montclair, in the area, so that rather than cite somebody immediately, we can give them this list of where they can park?
Well, we have provided a list of Montclair-related businesses. We figured that that would be the most convenient, but if we need to expand that and look beyond the area, we certainly can do that and provide that to any interested party at a later date.
Okay. Thank you. Madam City Clerk, do we have anybody who may wish to speak on this item this evening?
Yes, Mr. Tom Squires is requesting to speak.
Okay.
And it
Well,
looks, oh, sorry, there was another raised hand, but it just disappeared. So I didn't, oh, there it is. There is another person raising their hand also, so.
we'll start with Mr. Squires and go on to the next person. Is it Ruben Solis?
Yes,
Okay, so we'll start with Mr. Thomas Squires, and after him, we will have Mr. Ruben Solis. Mr. Squires, welcome this evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you today?
I'm fine.
I'm glad to have the pleasure of speaking with you. I did attend the Public Works Committee meeting a few weeks back and wasn't excited about what took place. I feel that the Public Works already had their mind made up what they were going to do with me. And I just feel that it's not right. My parking is only temporary and occasional on Palo Verde. It's because of my route and my hours of service. And sometimes my wife relieves me. And I just asked that maybe we could possibly go back to Public Works and work on this a bit. I've got numerous ideas and all kinds of information that I can forward to you. And other people within the council, because the truck parking, it's become a crisis in the United States right now. And I've done a lot of research on this in the last week. It's really hard for me. I've been working out of town 70 hours a week up here doing the emergency cleanup in the Carmel Valley on the fire cleanup. The truck has not been parked down there since December. And I'm just asking that the city allow me to park occasionally there. It's not a full time. I have properties that I rent out in Irwindale, Corona, Santa Rosa, California. So I have place to park, but it's just while I'm in transit, if you know what I mean.
Okay. Thank you. And certainly we can bring your suggestion back to the council when it is time to take some action.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Squires. That brings us to Mr. Ruben Solis.
You're welcome, sir. I'll stand by.
Thank you for this is your community.
I appreciate
Mr.
that.
Solis, are you on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay, well, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. So I actually have a question. Is this only regarding just that parking right there on Palo Verde and Brooks, or would it be also like parking like on Kingsley Street?
Go ahead, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. The only areas in the city of Montclair where commercial vehicles 10,000 pounds or higher in gross weight are permitted to park are on the north side of Palo Verde Street, between Central Avenue west towards the Montclair Autoplex Center, and then on Brook Street as defined in the report, between Ramon Avenue and I forget the name of the other street, but those are the only two areas in the city that we allow those types of vehicles to park on. This modification to the ordinance would eliminate all on-street parking for vehicles of a gross weight of 10,000 pounds or more throughout the city of Montclair. I also want to remind you that in the Palo Verde area, you will recall that that has been a very controversial area as it relates to the parking of residential properties for their personal vehicles. There is insufficient availability of parking already for workers at the Autoplex as well as for residents of the Pines apartment. You will recall that on the east side of Fremont Avenue and in certain interior streets to the east of that, there is already a permit parking program that only allows residents in those immediate areas to park on the streets, which prevents other residents from other surrounding areas to park. And so when there is an overabundance of parking on their streets, they have nowhere else to go. And now that we allow for the commercial vehicle parking on Palo Verde, that compounds the problem even more so, leading to complaints from residents and a further push to install permit parking throughout the area. So this really is also an effort that will help to impact the availability of parking for personal vehicles on neighborhood streets in that area, as well as for businesses in that area, particularly the Montclair Autoplex group. So we think that by eliminating the commercial vehicle parking, this should go a long way to help alleviate that problem.
Thank you. Do you have any more, Mr. Solis?
Yes, would we be able to speak about the parking that happens on the city of, right here on Kingsley Street, like the street sweeper that happens, like on Sundays and Wednesdays?
Are you talking about the residential?
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue, he's talking about a different issue. He's talking about the street sweeping parking restriction.
I wanted to make certain. That would not be related to this item this evening, Mr. Solis?
Yeah, no, it was two questions. I'm sorry, I didn't say it was a two-part question. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Residential street sweeping, I would encourage you to call in at our next meeting, April 19th, and under public comment, voice your concerns or your issues on that at that time, because it's not related to this specific agenda item.
Okay.
Okay? They're two separate things.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was asking for both parts. That's why.
Okay, no, the public comment would be the best place at the next meeting, April 19th, to address that issue. So, okay, are there any other comments in the audience on this? Let me look here. I don't see any other raised hands. I would then go to city council comments. The first hand I see raised is Council Member Johnson. Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to follow up from the Public Works meeting that I attended. And, I really understand what Mr. Squires is saying. He has been permitted to park there for years. And when I tried to put myself in his shoes, I thought about the fact that my family has parked in our driveway for 30 years. And if someone were to just out of the blue come up and say, you can't park in your driveway anymore, I'd be confused because, well, why? Why all of a sudden? And so, and I don't think I'd like it very much. And so I certainly understand Mr. Squire's position, but I also live on the other side of that coin because I have a neighbor who either works for or owns a business, a trash hauling business. They're very close to my home. And from time to time, they park their trash hauling truck in front of my house or in front of other residents' house. I don't like it. My neighbors don't like it. We are a very sleepy little closely knit community. And when those giant trucks are parked on our streets, it changes the whole look. It changes the feel of our neighborhood. And we don't like it. I'm sure that the people who own the trucks appreciate it because that's how they make their living. And I totally get it. And I'm much more satisfied when they park those trucks on their own property because then it doesn't impact the rest of us. So it really is a two-sided coin. And I understand both sides, but in the interest of the residents who have concerns about this, as we do with anything, I think we need to make decisions based on what's for the greater good. So while I would love to say that it's a great idea for Mr. Squires or anyone else who wants to park a truck to park it wherever they want, but it would have I believe that it would have a negative impact on the greater good. That's all I have tonight.
Next hand up I see appears to be, if I'm correct, Council Member Lopez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Actually, before we proceed, we do have one other hand in the public if you want to continue with the public.
I didn't see that one up earlier. Carolyn. Okay, I just did not see that one raised earlier. Carolyn, are you on the line? Maybe it was an error. I see her hand up. I don't see unmuted.
All right, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Go ahead, Mr.
I'll go ahead and proceed. I've vacillated on this issue. A month and a half ago when it was first broached to the council, I voted to extend it another month, go back to hearing, have the committee look at it, and then we made a decision to go ahead and proceed to where we're at now and forward it back to council for adoption of the ordinance. I think what Mr. Squires is saying, because I wrote a comment down, he says he parks there temporarily and occasionally and is rare. And he hasn't been there since December because of working in Northern California. Unfortunately, we cannot, correct me if I'm wrong, Madam City Attorney and Mr. City Manager, we can't carve out an exemption for one particular residence or a property to allow that because then we're showing favoritism towards one particular entity. We have to apply ordinances and rules and regulations to the greater good of all residents so they take benefit of them. So that's out of the question. But I think here we ultimately have to has to come to an end, because we're starting to get a proliferation of other trucks on these streets that may be prohibiting residents from parking, blocking the right, public right of view, etc. I would still like to know if Mr. Squires took advantage of the list of recommendations that the city provided him. And then I do know that staff has reached out to him and spoken to him even before I was on this council. And it seems like the issue just still hasn't been addressed. So I'm just a little mind boggled, if you will, but at some point we got to proceed with some type of a procedure in place. And I think we're at a point of no return here. So that's my comment.
And Mr. Squires is still in the audience. I don't know if after council comment, if he wants to say something in response to your question or not.
I would allow him, if the chair desires, allow him to make a brief comment in response to that.
Mr. Squires, are you still on the line? It shows he's still here. I don't know. He has his hand raised. Mr. Squires?
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe you could respond to Councilmember Lopez and his question.
I think part of the whole question and problem is the parking for all the other residents there on Cabrillo, or I'm sorry, on Palo Verde Street. When the city first initiated, it was plenty wide enough. There's no problems. I know they have problems with other trucks parked there, but I believe that's because the city has not been enforcing it since COVID, because I've called in on the other vehicles in the past. And can you reiterate again for me, please?
Well,
Mr.
yes, actually, yes, I was going to stop
Yeah.
you, Mr. Squires. But my question is very pointed. And that is, what have you taken advantage of the list of services or recommendations rather that staff gave you, and even our chief of police provided at the committee meeting? From the committee meeting point till now, have you attempted to look at those recommendations and see if you can possibly relocate your truck? I know it might come as an expense, but nonetheless, have you looked at other options?
Yeah. Okay. Am I muted or am I on?
We can hear you, sir.
Okay. Yes, I have plenty of other options, but they're not of convenience. They're far away, and they don't work with my hours of service, to where I have to stop at a certain time, or I have to switch and allow my wife to take over the truck. That's why I'm asking for some type of temporary occasional parking on the truck route. And that's why I got this going in the beginning, because I'd parked for decades at many properties up in the northern area. And I just think that those particular facilities are going to charge me monthly, and I'm not going to be able to utilize them in a positive financial way. At some point, I would think a parking ticket would be more economical if I got 2 of them a month. Do you see where I'm coming from?
I understand your comment, but let me also ask this. If your parking expenses for putting your vehicle in a location, can you not use that as a legitimate business expense for tax purposes? It would seem like it would be a part of your business operation.
Yes, but when I already have 3 properties at $200 a month that I rent throughout the state, and another one for the occasional use, I'm talking, I don't know, 15, 20 days a year. Like I say, I haven't even parked down there since before Christmas. So if I was paying monthly parking to somebody at that time, I would have already paid $600, which would be a percentage of my gross revenue over those 3 months. And I'm a local contractor. I do local work with Public Works. It puts me way out of my range. For example, if I have to go from Corona and take a load, and I'm going to log out at, let's just say, 6:30 in the evening, but traffic's bad and I'm not going to get there till 8 o'clock, I have to log out before 8 o'clock. I don't know where to go park, but I have many suggestions for Public Works. If I don't know if you want to go over it now. I've been doing a little bit more research. But I know the city doesn't allow parking anywhere unless it's enclosed behind a wall or something like that. But there are places where I could park temporary that would be off of public streets for 4 to 6 hours. That's all I'm asking, is the layover time. So not just like you say, people are moving vehicles or leaving them there for weeks. I understand that creates a problem for the city and people are probably abusing it. But I don't want that taken away from me because of other people's negligence.
All right, Mr. Squires, I appreciate your comments. I'm going to reclaim my time and yield back to the chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Squires. Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. I'm looking to see if any of the other council members have any comments. Okay,
Yeah, Mr. This is Major Trey.
Yes.
I'm going to move that we introduce, this is a first reading ordinance number 21-995. And that we set a public hearing for Monday, April 19 as a second public hearing for this item.
okay, there's a motion for the item to be forwarded to a public hearing to consider adoption on April 19th, 2021. This is to consider adoption. And there will be more, Mr. Squires, you could at that time also continue to make comments or send information to the city to be included in the agenda packet. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Yes,
Second.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion by Mayor Dutray, a second by Councilmember Johnson. Madam City Clerk, would you do the roll call?
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Martinez,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue,
I will say aye, and it is for the purposes of bringing it forward to the next hearing.
and Mayor Dutray.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that means the motion carries 5-0 to move it forward to another hearing, the second hearing for consideration of adoption.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, shall I read by number and title?
Shall be read by number and title only.
Ordinance number 21-995, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Montclair, California, amending section 8.36.090 of chapter 8.36 of the Montclair Municipal Code to prohibit commercial vehicle parking on Brook Street and Palo Verde Street.
Thank you. And that will be moved for those in the audience who wish to comment again, that will be moved to our April 19th meeting. That brings us to item number B, a second reading. Consideration of adoption of ordinance number 21-997, amending section 2.12.020 of the Montclair Municipal Code related to campaign contribution limits in accordance with Assembly Bill 57. And who is bringing this forward? The city manager or the city clerk?
Mr. Mayor, this is, of course, the second reading on this particular item. I don't really have a lot of new information to add. Just a reminder that, I apologize. Just a reminder that AB 571 was passed limiting campaign donations. The council decided at the March 1st meeting that they wanted to proceed without a limitation. And so staff prepared a ordinance, the ordinance attached, ordinance number 21-997, that provides that there will be no restriction on the campaign contribution limit for the city of Montclair. Under AB 571, that limit was $4,900. And by approving an ordinance that provides no limit on the contribution, there is no enforcement requirement. With the adoption of this ordinance, there would be no general fund impact. Staff recommends the council adopt ordinance number 21-997.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Before I open the public comments, do any of the council members have something specific before we open public comment? Mr. Lopez.
Well, I'd like to move the item, but you can take comment if you'd like from the public.
We need to do the public comment first. Madam City Clerk, are there any comments from the public? I'm trying to see with the attendees.
I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Rue.
Yes. Oh, there's Councilmember Martinez. Yes.
I couldn't figure out how to raise my
That's
hand.
okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just like to reiterate the point that I made at the last meeting, which is that, uh, they made some very good points in the past, but I do disagree with the adoption of this ordinance. Uh, in the past, the Montclair elections aren't very high spending campaigns. And I think a large part of that is because outside interests have not gotten involved. And I think that's the reason that California has adopted these campaign ceilings to um, keep big spending outside interests from affecting our local city government. I stand by that opinion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. I do not see,
Oh, we do have a request to speak from Bruce Culp, and also looks like another audience member is raising their hand.
okay, Mr. Culp.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah,
can.
all right. Speaking in opposition to unlimited campaign contributions, I believe large contributions put council members in a compromised position to alter their votes in support of those that provide those contributions. I've seen this recently where one of our most recently elected council members who received support, including financially from a city employee group, made voting decisions that were adverse to other city employee groups. I could see where a developer and outside interest who wants a certain project approved that may be opposed by the residents could promise a large contribution to a council member who is up for re-election, and in return getting a yes vote for that developer's project. There were several statements from council members at the last council meeting regarding their support for unlimited campaign contributions. Of course they would. One said we never had a problem before. Well, we never had an insurrection at the Capitol before either, but that doesn't mean it didn't occur on January 6th. So we should prevent future problems by limiting or eliminating campaign contributions now before it's too late. Another council member said, since we report contributions, that should prevent any issues. There's no way a report that a normal resident would have a difficult time finding, nor any interest in looking for it, will prevent any issues resulting from large campaign contributions. That's simply nonsensical. And of course, the most offensive comment was that campaign contributions are a form of free speech. This is by far just a perverse definition of free speech. If that's the case, this would mean rich people would have more access and have more free speech than poor people. Free speech is free. Campaign contributions are paid speech at best. At worst, they can be considered as a bribe by some. I ask the council adopt a policy of eliminating campaign contributions, or at least setting a limit of no more than $5 campaign contributions per entity. This will prevent city council members from being influenced in any way from the contributor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culp. Madam City Clerk, you said there's somebody else raising their hand?
Yes, Mr. Nguyen is raising his hand on this item.
There it is. Yes, Mr. Nguyen.
I also want to echo Mr. Bruce Culp in his comment and in the support of implementing a policy for campaign, a limitation on campaign contribution. My concern as well is the amount of money are raised where certain folks are able to, especially with the help, my concern is also with the help of outside contributors into our city politics. And my concern is that I don't want, or at least minimize, outside influence, or even though it's unavoidable, at least minimize and avoid over influence of outside influences into our city's issues, into our city politics. And also one of the city council member had provided a quote to the Daily Bulletin expressing that they feel as though this is an issue that they feel that the state is dictating to the city. Well, if that is a concern, then I hope that they listen to us, that instead of perceiving it as the state dictating onto what the city should be doing. We are citizens, for example, such as myself and Mr. Bruce Culp, and we are encouraging and imploring you to implement a limitation on campaign contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. I do not see, let me verify here, any other hands raised.
I do not see any hands.
Okay, thank you, Madam City Clerk. I would then return this to the council for any additional comments they may have. I do have a comment, but do any of the council members, and I know Mayor Dutre is on the line, have any, Councilmember Lopez, your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you, sir. Let's back up and understand once again why this city is broaching this idea about campaign contribution limits. It is because the state adopted a new piece of legislation, Assembly Bill 571, forcing all locals, that includes cities, water districts, school districts, you name it, even the county level, although our county already has contribution limits established via voter approval. The state is dictating to us saying you must adopt either this limit or a smaller limit. And in doing so, we, the state, then regulate your campaigns. We regulate your city clerk's office. And it basically takes away the power from our city clerk and in her authority. And that is something that, yes, I did make a comment to the press that I found it offensive that the state was dictating policy to the locals, us being a city council, on how we conduct our affairs in our campaigns. Now, Mayor Dutre alluded to this at the last meeting, and it actually was quoted in the press as saying that we've never had a problem or issue with it in Montclair, and we still don't. And I will stand by my position that full campaign disclosure of anything over $100 be reported, and it is, based on the reporting schedule that the state says sets for all campaigns in any election cycle. We do report them. Everyone that has run and is elected, our donations are revealed. I did go over those numbers before, and they're all under $20,000 in this last election. The year prior, they were actually exceeded $20,000. I'm sorry, 2 years prior. And then in 2012, you have to go far back to 2012 when we had anywhere from $60,000 to $80,000 expended. And that was all from Montclair money, by the way. And we didn't have a problem back then, even 8-9 years ago. So, when we start regulating campaign contribution limits, you then create an avenue for what folks call shadow political action groups, campaigns of anybody can create a separate controlled committee that is then filed and run with the county or another entity, and that they can then play in our local politics. And that is something that has been protected by the courts. We have other cities in this county that is allowed. We have other bargaining groups that form PACs and they play in elections. It's all well within their right. I will stand by the opinion that giving financial money to a candidate is a form of free speech because you are freely backing the candidate of your choice that represents your values or issues at any given time. So that said, I think it's a good practice for us to continue having no limits in Montclair. We get rid of outside influence in doing so, and we do full reporting. And that's exactly what this ordinance does.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. Next, we have Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, it was my understanding that if we wanted to as a city, we could also select higher campaign contribution limit. So we really do have full authority at this point to decide on a number, if any, that we think is appropriate. But I think the benefit that we have here of adopting the limits imposed by the state is that we can piggyback on the FPPC's responsibility for administration and enforcement of those limits rather than having to spend our own funds to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. Before I make a comment, do we have any other comments from the council?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Real quickly, we discussed this at believe, the meeting on March 1st regarding the FPPC coming in to analyze the books and make determinations on reporting. There is a provision in that bill that does allude to them being able to bill the entities for their time. Prior campaigns that have had to deal with that have had astronomical bills because there is no higher authority that regulates the FPPC, and they can then unilaterally charge a rate that could be astronomical. We already have that in-house by hiring a city clerk that is certified and has the experience and the training to conduct, run, bear in mind, to conduct and run campaigns and the balloting process and the candidate certification. And now we have her obviously doing, by virtue of any city clerk in the state rather, doing campaign finance reporting. It's just been work. It works. And I fully believe in local control, and I believe in our city clerk's ability to do things fairly and accurately. And it's just simply works. I don't want us to be billed by another entity when we have it in-house.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez.
This is Mayor Dutray. This is the third time we've on this. I made my comments known in the first two meetings. I move to consider adoption of ordinance number 21-997. This be a second reading, be read by number and title only.
Second.
There's been a motion. I will need a second, then I would like to make some comments myself.
Second,
There's been a
Mr.
motion
Mayor
by
Pro
Mayor
Tem.
Dutray. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lopez. Before I call for the vote, I would like to just make some comment. I've noticed, and even before this law was promulgated by the state, many cities across this state and local entities adopted campaign spending or campaign contribution limits. What quite often happens then is the very well-to-do person runs, they can spend unlimited amounts of money. They can spend whatever they choose. Those campaign limits do not apply to them. It is their personal money. They spend it, and then the very well-to-do person gets in. Another observation is, and it a little bit ties into what Mr. Lopez said, I've noticed in those cities that independent expenditures come into play. And independent expenditures where a group, a PAC, gets together. They don't coordinate with the candidate at all. They can't. That's illegal. And they do mailers, they do phone banks, they do paid walkers, they do all sorts of things in favor of that candidate. And it seems in the cities where they have those limits, you see a lot more of that. That's just my observation. And I have not had a problem with, in the years I've lived here in the city, which is my whole life, I don't think it's been a problem. My concern would be that we have a very wealthy person decide they're going to run, and because others couldn't have that type of money, they could just go in and buy an election. So could a committee through an independent expenditure. And that candidate wouldn't even know about it. So those are my comments, but we have a motion by Mayor Dutray, a second by Councilmember Lopez. Madam City Clerk, would you please make the roll call?
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Martinez,
No.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Rowe,
Aye.
Mayor Dutray.
Dutray, aye.
Thank you.
The motion passes 4-1. And Madam City Clerk, this is read by title and number only.
Ordinance number 21-997, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Montclair adding definitions to Chapter 2.02 and amending Section 2.12.020 of the Montclair Municipal Code related to campaign contribution limits in accordance with Assembly Bill 571.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. That brings us to item number 8, the consent calendar. Before I ask the council if they wish to pull anything, I would like to request that we pull item number D as in dog 1. It's a resolution, and I believe we also have somebody who'd like to comment on that at the appropriate time.
Mayor Pro Tem Rowe, this is Dutray. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I know there was a gentleman earlier, I'm not sure if he's on the line still, but he wanted to talk about Kingsley Avenue and parking on Kingsley Avenue. And I'm not sure if we can go back to public comments since there was some confusion probably about well, this time it's going to be on the agenda. Is it possible that we can reopen public comment or ask him, he's on the line, and if he wants to have 5 minutes in the public comments?
That would have been Mr. Solis. Madam City, let's see if he's still on the line.
I don't see him on the line anymore.
I'm
It was
looking to
Ruben Solis.
see. I don't see him, but we'll ask anyway. Mr. Solis, are you on the line? Okay, I don't think he's on the line. Do we have any council member who wishes to pull anything on the consent calendar? Mr. Lopez,
Item D2,
B2 or D2?
D like David, number 2.
Okay, number D2. Let's see, I see, Councilmember Johnson, yes.
Yes, sir. I'd like to pull Be Like Boy 1.
B as in boy 1.
Yes, sir.
And let's see, Councilmember Lopez still has his hand up. Do you have an item?
No, I'm
item?
sorry. I didn't lower my hand, sorry.
Mayor Dutre, do you have any item?
No, I don't.
Okay. Councilmember Martinez?
I do
No.
not, thank you.
Alrighty. That brings us to item number B1. And this is to consider authorizing the city manager to exercise a conflict waiver, providing that Best and Krieger may represent the city of Montclair in various special council matters. Do we have a question on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I have a question, just a matter of clarification from staff, if I may. I understand that Best and Krieger represent the city of Montclair as well as the city of Upland, and this issue is regarding an issue that involves both cities. My question for staff is that although it's the same company, but will the same attorney on issues that impact both of us, will it be the same attorney for both Upland and Montclair?
No, this is City Manager Starr. It would be a different attorney representing both agencies. So in this particular case, the city attorney for Upland, who is an employee of BB&K, will represent Upland on general matters related to that city. He will be excluded from representing Upland in relation to this particular issue. And the special legal counsel that works with the city of Montclair will be the representative for Montclair on this particular issue, but will not be representing Upland on any issues related to Upland that the BB&K city attorney would be involved with.
Thank you, Mr. City Star. That answers my question. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Starr and Councilmember Johnson. That brings us to item number D1. Madam City Clerk, I believe it was Mr. Nguyen who wanted to comment on this item.
Actually, it was Carolyn Raft had made an advance request to speak, and Mr. Nguyen raised his hand to speak on the item.
Oh, okay. So, Mrs. Raft,
Yes,
you
there she
wish to
is.
speak on this item?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. You know, I have a comment saying it's a shame that cities, including Montclair, or any government agency has to resort to a resolution like this against discrimination on Asian Americans or any other race, religion, national origin, disability, sex, gender expression, age, sexual orientation, or military/veteran status. We are going through now with COVID, and it's nobody's fault but the government's. It's not the citizens and not anyone else's. Americans should have learned from past experiences through heartache that discrimination hurts and destroys everyone and brings us nothing but hurt. As city council representatives, you can't have any of these feelings against anyone or one department advocate If so, you don't belong on this council or any other government organization because you are representing everyone and not just a few. Through my years on the council, I have met many, many Asian Americans here in our community, as well as some of the other organizations that I mentioned. And myself, as well as so many other people I know, would not dream of discriminating against them or any other race. It's just not the way God wants us to be. So please let everyone you know that this is not the American way. We are God-fearing people, so let's remember that and let's be kind. And I do have, I noticed when we were, Mr. Lopez was doing the Pledge of Allegiance, he did not stand, and that is disrespectful to our flag. So you might remember that in the future. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Raft.
You're welcome.
That brings us, Madam City Clerk, is Mr. Nguyen still with us?
Yes, hello, thank you. Thank you for those kind words, Ms. Raft. I just want to say that I am appreciative of having this resolution brought forth and how it's written. I think, of course, we can always do more to be active in how we address any forms of violence. And violence come in all shape. It doesn't always have to be physical. But of course, this last year in particular, we've seen an increase in reporting and actual cases of physical violence against Asian Americans, especially the elders. I think this particular resolution is important symbolically just because it does showcase that Montclair is taking a active, proactive and visible stance against issues along the line of race, sexual orientations, any forms of prejudice and discrimination. I think what Council Member Martinez has said before at a previous City Council meeting, and I really liked how she stated this, is that when we address these issues that we need to be intentional, because when people engage in any sort of violence, whether that's sexism, whether that's racism, they are very intentional. They know exactly what they're doing, and the violence that they commit have very tangible material consequences, oftentimes deadly. And even when you look at the history of the United States and the forms of racism, the forms of classism that we've engaged in has also been very tangible through policies, through actual practices, whether that's at the local level, state, or national. And so when we combat these issues, when we address these issues, we need to be just as practical, just as intentional, the ways in which these forms of violence and hate are enacted. And so I appreciate this resolution, but in the future, I still, of course, would like our city to do more in very tangible, material ways. But I appreciate whoever wrote this resolution, and I encourage all of you to vote for the passing of the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. I do not see any other hands raised. Oh, wait, there's one. Bruce Call.
Hi, I just want to state my support for this measure. I think it was said earlier, there shouldn't be a need for this, but you know, discrimination of any kind is it's just despicable. It's the lowest form of human behavior. You know, I grew up just loving all people at all times, and I just think a measure like this should be unnecessary, but in these times, over these past 4 years, I've seen an increase in this type of behavior, and I just want to support anything. The only group of people I've ever hated were Boston Celtics players, but even then, I've learned to love them over the years too. So I fully support this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Let me look. I do not see any other hands raised in the public. So I will now return this to the council. Councilmember Martinez, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank City Manager Starr and our staff and whoever wrote this resolution. I think it shows how aware our city is, and like I've said in the past, how intentional we are being or trying to be. We really have to look at the facts, and the facts are that there is racism and discrimination and hate and violence. And I appreciate that we can be a city that can take a stance one way or another and say we're not going to tolerate this in our city. And of course, this is just going to be one of many, many steps, and we have a long way to go. But I think this is a good big step.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to say how important I believe this resolution is, because we are taking responsibility, and we're saying here in this city, racism is not acceptable. It's not acceptable against the Asian community or any other community. And it's important that we say that publicly. And when that racism, if it rears its ugly head here in this city, I believe that swift action will be taken, because that's just not acceptable behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Are there any other, before I make a comment, are there any other comments? Councilmember Lopez.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, fellow council members and the public. You know, this may be a surprise, but I actually would concur with Councilwoman Raff's comments just a few minutes ago that it's a sad state of affairs when governments, local governments and entities have to come to the point where we have to issue resolutions on what should be the obvious, that violence is of no, has no place in any setting and in any community. I will say the two most lines that stand out the most to me in the resolution are that we resolve to continue protecting all residents of Montclair, including those who are targets of hate, violence, and discrimination, and that we continue providing fair and equal access and treatment to all residents, visitors, and members of the Montclair business community. And notice that those statements have with them no descriptive terms. And that's what's important to me, that they apply to everyone. And that's been my point of view from the very beginning. The fact that we're adopting this, it's all encompassing, it uncovers and protects all residents. And for that, I will make the motion to approve and adopt it.
We'll make a motion for the entire consent calendar. So.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor Pro, this is
Mr. Mayor.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
You know, I will say this, that I think in 2021, for this to happen, continue on, we have hatred towards any racial or national groups that's still occurring today is very unfortunate, especially some of the things we see on the national level. And Montclair is a very diverse community of very much many nationals who have come from many different countries and who speak many different languages. And it's too important for us to respect all of our races and nationals and other important issues to make our communities stronger. So I appreciate staff putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Dutre. I will make a comment on this, very similar to what others have said. I was thinking back this evening, it was May of 2019. I was in Washington, D.C. in my professional life. And I was privileged enough to be asked to be on the floor of the House of Representatives when they were voting on the expanded fair housing / non-discrimination in housing bill. It was necessary because there were categories of many of them here today that were not included in the original fair housing bill. I was pleased when that bill passed. It was an almost overwhelming Yes. I believe that we have to have non-discrimination and fairness in everything we do. We cannot be divided by race, creed, color, lifestyle, religion. Let's go on and on. We are one country and one America. We are one community. And we cannot tolerate racism or discrimination of any kind. Each of us should be free to express ourselves and to move to the highest level of our achievement based on our merits. We should be able to be free at night in our homes, on public streets, and in any gathering spot. So I do support this tonight. Are there any other comments? I see Mr. Lopez still has his hand up. Are there any other comments before we move to item D2 and then to vote on the consent calendar? Okay. That brings us to item number D2. It was pulled by Councilmember Lopez. Consideration of adoption of Resolution 21-3306, continuing to declare that a local public health emergency exists in the city of Montclair. Mr. Lopez, what questions did you have or concerns on this item tonight?
Well, question to our city manager, Mr. Starr, would you briefly give a mini report as to the changes? I mean, obviously, those of us on council read them in the report, but for purposes of the public, could you elaborate on what changes are taking place depending on our action tonight and when those actions will be implemented?
Are you speaking on the item related to reopening of city facilities?
Yes.
Item number D2.
Yes.
The COVID.
That is a business, that's a response, so it's not on the consent calendar.
No, Mr. Lopez is talking about adoption of Resolution 21-3306, declare that a local public health emergency exists in the city of Montclair, updating provisions of the declaration related to COVID-19, paid leave, provision of employee vaccination incentives, and continuing city eligibility for state and federal.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I thought he was speaking on the reopening of the city facilities. Well, in this particular item, this is updating the resolution to reflect what the change in state law is. You will recall that the federal law in relation to the provision of leave time to employees who contracted COVID in both the public and private sector expired to December 31st. And then on January 1st, the city's resolution, which was a continuation of the emergency resolution, remained in place. That continued providing 120 days of leave time related to an employee who contracted COVID-19. And then in last month, the state of California, the legislature passed a bill and the governor signed it into law that continued effectively the 80-hour leave time provision that was required under the federal law, mandating that public and private sectors throughout the state continue providing that. So the purpose of this resolution is to amend the emergency resolution adopted by the city council back in 2020. It alters the 120 hours and changes that to the 80 hours that is reflected in the state law. In addition, there is a provision in the modification to this resolution that would allow the city manager to develop an incentive program to encourage employees to receive the COVID vaccine for purposes of moving us closer to herd immunity. As you know, many health officials believe that a 70% vaccination rate throughout the state of California is the minimum necessary to achieve herd immunity. However, many in the health profession believe that a 90% vaccination rate is actually required to receive a true herd immunity. That is pretty much standard and reflected in other types of vaccinations. So that would be the purpose of the incentive program that the council would be directing the city manager to investigate and consider recommending to the city council going forward. Those are the significant changes that are reflected in the resolution to make it comply with state and federal law. And the resolution also has a provision that going forward, we will simply automatically adopt the changes in federal or state law related to COVID-19 and how that would affect our emergency resolution. That way we don't have to continue coming back to the city council asking that you adopt those changes going forward.
Mr. Starr, the issue regarding incentives for employees that choose to get the vaccine. There is no provision in this ordinance or any policy that in some way would inadvertently penalize an employee who chose not to take the vaccine, correct?
Yeah, there is no penalty at all. It is only an incentive for those who do receive the vaccine.
And did you say at the beginning of your comments that the issue regarding sick pay or COVID leave pay was changed by the state?
Yes, well, no, it reflected what was in the federal law, and it reflected what was previously recommended by the state as well, and that is the 80 hours of COVID leave. That would be in addition to any other leave time. So in other words, if an employee contracts COVID-19 and they have to take off work for it, obviously, because we require it, then under the previous federal law that expired December 31st, they were entitled to 80 hours. Then under the passage of the Coronavirus Relief Act, the federal government only recommended that municipalities and states continue the 80 hours that was provided under the federal law, but they did not make it mandatory. The city's resolution already provided that 120 hours would be provided, so we continued providing that going forward. But now that the state law has come in and adopted the recommendation from the federal government that 80 hours be the standard, we are now adopting with this resolution that 80-hour standard, and it would be available to any employee that contracts COVID-19 for whatever reason. Even if they do not receive the vaccine, they're not penalized. They would continue to get the 80 hours that would be provided under state law.
And then I will have the same question that I had about a month and a half, 2 months ago when we addressed this change with the, I forgot what particular law it was called then, the last set of COVID package that former President Trump presided over in signing the law. If an employee contracts COVID while on duty or well, that's irrelevant. If an employee contracts COVID a second time, but then the first time they've exhausted nearly every hour extended or afforded them, I personally do not want an employee being denied any further time and then having to go back and retroactively try to fight for pay or any credits allotted to them. And I want some assurances that that would not be the case, because I understand, based upon the policy that we've adopted, discretion ultimately falls with your office in those determination matters.
Mr. Hamilton may want to pipe in on that particular question, but it is my understanding that it is cumulative for a year, but it can continue. Well, actually, this particular law expires in September of this year. So if this law is not renewed, then the 80 hours would go away. But I believe that in the current year, that it sets 80 as the maximum for the year. So it isn't whether or not they get it multiple times that they'll be eligible for an additional 80 hours. It does limit it, I believe, to 80 hours during the course of this particular legislation, unless, of course, it is again reauthorized. So what you're asking is that the city manager have authority to continue providing an additional 80 hours. I don't believe that that's provided for in this resolution. The council would probably have to direct that change.
And Mr. City Manager, this is Mr. Hamilton. And there are provisions in there as well for fire suppression personnel who actually have a higher number of hours based upon their different work schedule. But Mr. Starr is correct. The way that the law reads right now is it's retroactively applied to January 1st of 2021 and is set to currently expire September 30th of 2021. However, if necessary and based upon the conditions of the pandemic, it's likely that the legislature will likely continue and extend this as they have other COVID-19 related legislation.
Again, I'll just make a public statement again that it's my position that an employee especially if they're in a line of work that exposes them to members of the public. That could even be a person here in City Hall at the counter that contracts COVID more than once, that they somehow, at least this city, be gracious enough to accommodate them and extend to them some leave time that would be paid because in my opinion, they didn't catch COVID at their fault. It wasn't their being. Now that said, unless someone does something that isn't wise outside of business hours and they go and, you know, hang out with a crowd of 200 people without masks, then obviously they made themselves susceptible and they will ultimately suffer any consequences that may come to them. But anyhow, for purposes of our employees on duty and working, I'm a big advocate of them getting the pay, services, and benefits that they're entitled to.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. Are there any other? Yes, are there any other comments on this?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, this is
Yes.
Detroit here. I think, you know, we do provide 80 hours and that's by law for COVID related issues. Obviously, if an employee gets sick with other issues, they will use their regular sick time and then regular vacation time, depending on how severe it is, or if it's a workers' comp issue, then obviously that'll become a workers' compensation issue. So the 80 hours is in addition to what other sicknesses allow for. And if an employee does get sick with COVID, they do have that 80 hours, and then they still have their sick time, their vacation time, they can also utilize, or the administrative time as well, utilize, as the case may be. Currently, the cases for COVID are really low. As we know, we're should be in the orange tier tomorrow in San Bernardino County. This county right now is averaging, I think, less than 100 cases per day. In addition to that, as we know, the vaccination is occurring. And right now, this country just did, I think, over 4 million vaccinations here recently. So I would hope that every employee will get vaccinated to ensure they don't get this virus. So I'm comfortable with the language in here. What I don't see in this resolution, maybe the city manager can address me why not, it's not in here, but under resolution number 24 on page 16, you do talk about the vaccination. But what I would like to see in this resolution, if it's appropriate, is we have a paragraph talks about how we get the entire city of Montclair, not just employees, but the entire population of Montclair, including the working day population, vaccinated here in Montclair. And how do we get a large vaccination center here in the city of Montclair? That's, to me, is the issue right now. Mr. City Manager, you have a comment?
We are actually working on a vaccination center being located up at Montclair Place. So we anticipate hearing maybe as early as this week. A location has already been identified. I believe it's on the upper level of Montclair Place. The outlet is available, and there appears to be an agreement moving forward with the County Public Health Department to locate a vaccination center at that location. Again, we should hear this week, and I'll let the council members know immediately when we do hear.
That's great if that happens. I appreciate that. With that, I'm going to move for approval of the entire consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a motion by Mayor Dutray for the consent calendar as presented this evening. It has been seconded by Council Member Johnson. I see a hand raised. Let me see. It's just bear with me on here. I'm trying to see whose hand is raised. One of the attendees. Oh,
Mr. Culp.
Mr. Culp. Is it?
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Starr on that last comment about the Montclair Place. I was thinking that we have, sufficient available space at the Montclair Place. We got an empty Sears building. We've got an empty Nordstrom building. So I was going to recommend that if I was able to public comment for a super vaccination site. And yes, make a priority for the citizens, for the residents of Montclair to get their vaccinations first. As a backup to homelessness in the county, I think those would be excellent sites for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a comment from former Councilmember Raft. Your hand is up.
No, it wasn't up, but I do agree with everything that was said. It would be great to have a place in Montclair Place so that our community does have a place to go to. So I very much support something like that, and I hope it comes through.
Thank you. We have a motion for the consent calendar by Mayor Dutray. We have a second by Councilmember Johnson. Madam City Clerk, would you take the roll call?
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Martinez,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue,
Aye.
Mayor Dutray.
Aye, did you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we got you. Yes.
The consent calendar passes 5-0. That brings us to item number 10, response to council inquiry. Item number A, consider receiving and filing response to council inquiry regarding the reopening of city facilities.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, this particular item, of course, has come back to the City Council for consideration on a number of occasions. This recent rendition is to address the reopening of city facilities pursuant to the city's facilities public reopening health and safety plan that was adopted by the City Council back in September of 2020. The plan provided that when the County of San Bernardino entered red tier, 2 weeks after the county remained in that tier, the city would examine the reopening of city facilities. So pursuant to that direction, effective April 6th, tomorrow, city buildings will open to the public for the conduct of city business only. Attendees must wear face masks, practice social distancing, and agree to temperature scans before interacting directly with members of staff in face-to-face meetings. And appropriate signage has already been posted regarding CDPH guidance compliances related to the reopening of city facilities, including City Hall, and I believe the police department is functioning and ready to move forward as well. This does not include the Human Services Building because of the nature of their programs and the restrictions on a lot of their activities that continue. So we will be weighing the reopening of the Human Services Building at the appropriate time. City parks will also be accessible to the public effective tomorrow. However, certain park features will remain closed. For example, the splash pad at Hoffman Park will remain closed until the summer of 2022, and outdoor basketball courts will remain closed pursuant to CDPH guidance and will remain unpermitted until the guidance allows for their reopening. The skate park is also a problematic location, and it is likely that we will keep the skate park closed at least for the next week or two to continue monitoring that location. Council members may be aware that despite the fact that the skate park has been closed, the fence gets climbed on a daily basis throughout the day by a number of youth who have demonstrated a lack of respect for the guidance and the concern for their health and safety. And while they have been advised that they need to stay out of the park, they continue to ignore the directions from city staff and continue to break into the park. In fact, probably if I walk out the door right now, I would probably see individuals in the skate park. So we're going to continue to monitor that activity to try and ensure that the participants understand what the guidance requirements are, and until we can get the appropriate signage posted to direct them as to how to properly engage at the park and follow the restrictions related to the number of individuals that can be in the park at any one time. I understand that there may be a lack of compliance even after those regulations are posted, but nonetheless, the organization has an obligation to do that. The tennis courts will be available for single plays only, and appropriate signage will be posted. Playground sets, including the slides, jungle gyms, and swing sets, will be open to children 12 years of age and younger with adult supervision. Park attendees shall wear face masks, except when engaging in physical exercise, such as single tennis, practice social distancing, excluding members of the same household, and avoid gatherings, excluding members of the same household. Separate agreements are in place with sport leagues for the use of city sport fields, Outdoor sports activities, youth and adult, are subject to CDPH guidance. Indoor sports activities, including indoor basketball and volleyball for both youth and adult, are subject to CDPH guidance and will remain unpermitted until allowed by those guidance. Effective May 3rd, City Council meetings will resume in the council chambers under restrictive protocols. Those protocols include separation or sneeze-type panels that are installed and are in place between City Council members and city staff. Council members and staff shall wear face coverings at all times except when speaking. Of course, that is up to the discretion of the individual who is speaking. City staff representation in the council chambers shall be limited based on City Council agenda presentation items and as directed by the city manager. Members of the public who are in attendance shall wear face masks and shall be social distanced while they are in the audience seating area, and the seating shall be appropriately marked for social distancing. Overflow seating will be available in the west lobby of City Hall, and appropriate signage will be posted. Public attendees shall only address the City Council by submitting a written request and when called upon the mayor pursuant to the guidelines that are established in the agenda packet. Of course, members of the public can also call in or participate in Zoom in order to view the council that way as well. And they can also submit questions through the Zoom process or by providing a written statement to the city clerk in advance. Planning commissions will resume May the 10th in the City Council chambers pursuant to the protocols established for City Council meetings. Then when the city enters into, or the county enters into orange tier, which the mayor indicated could be as early as tomorrow, the youth center will reopen after the county has been in the orange tier for a minimum of 2 weeks. Participants will be required to wear face coverings and practice social distancing while they are in the youth center, and public attendance will be limited based on CDPH guidance. Appropriate signage shall be posted. Also, when we enter the orange tier, Community Activities Commission meetings will resume in the council chambers under restrictive protocols as provided for City Council meetings. Tier 4 yellow or Tier 5 green, once it is established by the CDPH, the Senior Center may be reopened after San Bernardino County has been in Tier 4 yellow for no less than 2 weeks, subject to CDPH guidance. However, if the CDPH does establish a Tier 5 green, it is unlikely that the Senior Center will reopen until we enter the Tier 5 green. Again, Tier 4 yellow or Tier 5 green, all other city-sponsored programs and activities shall return to normal operating schedule. Also under Tier 3 orange, there will be, which would be a statewide reopening health metric requirement that directs the reopening of Tier 3 orange. And again, the county is in compliance with the requirements under Tier 3. We would have to have been under the requirements for a minimum of 3 weeks, and the county has achieved that. Effective Wednesday, March 15th, is when the county entered into the red tier. So 3 weeks after that, we would be allowed to enter into the orange tier under the state guidance. So we do believe that effective tomorrow, the state is likely to announce that San Bernardino County can enter into the orange tier effective Wednesday. Tier 4 yellow also provides separate guidance requirement or health metric requirements that are also addressed in the agenda report. And then Tier 5 green would be full reopening. There would be no restrictions or modifications on any businesses or any programs as it relates to reopening. We would effectively be in full reopening in a green tier. The only caveat to this that the council may want to consider that is that the Biden-Harris administration did request that you consider delaying reopenings until the nation reaches 200 million vaccines or April the 29th, whichever comes sooner. That is up to the city council discretion whether you want to go that direction. Under fiscal impact, reopening city facilities, including parks, will obviously increase general fund operating and maintenance requirements. We would have to provide more attendance, not only to enforcement of the various guidance that have been established by the California Department of Public Health, but we would also have to we would have to provide enhanced service at all of the city's parks. That would mean that we would have to bring back the park positions that were left vacant in relation to dealing with the economic impact of COVID-19, as well as some police positions. There would be an impact of about $650,000 to the city's general fund to bring those positions back. Staff's recommendation is that the city receive and file the response to council inquiry, and that you take one of the following actions: that you adopt the city facilities reopening protocols and practices as provided for herein and as I have discussed, or B, you, as requested by President Biden, you delay the reopening of city facilities to Thursday, April 29th, or the day after the nation achieves the Biden-Harris administration objective of fully vaccinating 200 million Americans, which is expected to occur by April the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Let me look here. We have a hand raised, former council member Carolyn Raft. Do you have a comment on this item? No, there's another hand raised also from Bruce Culp. Mrs. Raft. Hello. Carolyn? I will move on to Mr. Culp.
Hi, thank you. I didn't know this was even an item I'd like to speak on, but you know, I just saw on the news today that there's a UK variant that has the possibility of spreading nationwide.
Yeah, she's feeling good. They're both like getting better now. So.
And I just want to make sure that we are careful, that we still make our mask mandate for at least a few more weeks in this city, that we do our best to make sure that everybody's, complying with this. If we could hold on for just a couple more weeks, at least 2 or 3, while there's more people getting vaccinated, we're going to get over this hump. If we relax a little bit right now, the experts from the CDC and everywhere are saying that we could have a 4th wave of another surge in this virus. So I just ask that whatever restrictions are in place today, that we maintain them for just a little while longer, and then we have the ability to open up a lot stronger by May. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culp. Is Mrs. Raft still on the call? Mrs. Raft? Your hand is raised.
Is she going?
Hello? Mrs. Raft?
We heard her for a second.
Mrs. Raft? Okay, I don't think she can hear us. I would then bring this item back to the council for consideration. Are there any comments or questions from the council? Mayor Dutre, do you have anything?
Yeah, what I will say is that it's time to open the parks. Dodger Stadium is opening up Friday, fans. Angel Stadium just had fans earlier this week. Disneyland's opening it up. Universal Studios, I believe, is already open, soon to be open. Magic Mountain is definitely open. And the parks in the other surrounding cities are already open. I support what's in the staff's recommendation. I realize that there's a potential of these variants of becoming an issue of increasing cases. There's no indication right now that here in Southern California. That's why everybody needs to get vaccinated as fast as possible. But outside use, when the public has got a mask on and they're being responsible, it's been proven that outside use is less of a risk compared to inside use, especially without a mask on. Everybody should continue on to wear a mask. So I move for approval of staff report.
Okay, we have a motion. So we can move this to discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a question. I'm not sure what the motion was, if it was about the first option or the second option. I'm presuming it was the first option, but I just want to make sure I'm
I
clear.
thought it was the first option because that was staff recommendation, but I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
we adopt-
Mayor Dupre, can you clarify?
Yeah, I move to the first option, which is move to adopt the city facilities reopening protocols and practice as provided for herein in the staff report of the city facilities reopening health and safety plan.
Okay, so we have a motion. I would entertain a second and then any discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It is a second by Councilmember Lopez. Now, council members, any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
if I might. Few comments and a few questions. And I'm debating as to which to go into first. Let me go into the questions. For staff, please, regarding the statements in the staff report. Particularly, let's start with, I believe, page 104 of our agenda regarding the skate parks. Let me ask the question first, though, regarding the kids that are jumping the fence. Do we know for certain that those kids doing that and utilizing the bowls, even though the skate bowls are technically off limits at the moment, do we know for certain that those kids are Montclair residents?
They are, because it's the same kids on a daily basis, and since they're skating there, they're not driving there. We believe that the majority of them are coming from the local area. I will say that almost every one of them will say that they simply had no idea that they're outside of the city and they weren't aware of the rule. Of course, they climb the fence and they're the same kids every day, multiple times a day. So we believe that that is simply a ruse to prevent us from calling the police and issuing them a citation. But considering the fact that they are the same kids every day, multiple times a day, I would say that they are local.
Okay, thank you. Having identified at least one or two that are there several times, I would concur that the statement is accurate. But you can put it past a teenage boy to try to game the system to utilize the skate bowls, those devoted skateboarders. That's just their culture. But yeah, they're indeed doing that. Now, having said that, though, with respect to the skate park usage, there's a line in here. Well, first of all, you set time limits to 1 hour sessions per skater. If other skate park participants are waiting, then with 2 hour breaks between skate activity if necessary to permit access by waiting skaters. Participants are required to comply with posted rules and shall not engage in physical contact while in the skate park. I'm all for safety regulations and making sure people don't contract the virus and all, but who is monitoring that and enforcing this once we adopt it? Are we going to have state employees out there?
No, it's self-monitored, just like all the rules are right now. We are prohibited by the state of California to monitor a skate park if we are to avoid liability. So I would say that virtually the vast majority of skate parks in the state of California are unmonitored. The participants self-monitor their activities. Sometimes they comply with the rules, sometimes they don't. It depends on the group of skaters. The ones who respect skating and treat it as a sport are the ones who typically will respect all of the rules and wear the appropriate gear. The ones who don't are the ones who don't really care what the rules say. And we understand that that will be the case here, that the majority of skaters probably will ignore the rules. But we will not be monitoring simply because we are prohibited by the state of California, again, from doing that if we want to maintain our ability to not be responsible for injuries that occur at the park. But nonetheless, we do have an obligation to post the required rules, and we are in the process of getting those rules printed up so that we can have them posted.
And then the next line of that statement states that drinks and refreshments in the skate park are prohibited. The way it's written now, technically water is prohibited, even though it might be common sense. I would, if we're trying to limit a particular drink, I'd like for that to be clarified that, I mean, there's nothing we can do to prevent someone who's actually involved in physical activity from drinking water, nor should we. So I'm a little bit bothered by that statement only because at the moment they can't even have a water bottle with them, which I think is a little bit ridiculous based on the language. If that can be amended and changed, I would appreciate that. Regarding members of the public that come in for council meetings, it states that the members shall be distanced in the audience, but it doesn't specify regarding if they're from the same household. I know that we have several residents that are regular attenders that are husband and wife. Are we going to ask them to sit apart? And then what if we do, what happens in the event that an adult brings a child with them? Are we going to ask them to be spaced apart as well? And then the requirement that public attendees shall only address the city council by submitting a written request. I don't think we could do that technically. I think state law, correct me if I'm wrong, says that anyone that attends a public meeting, whether they put it in writing or not, and requests recognition to speak on a public event, they're entitled to speak. So those are just some of the questions in reading the report that I had that I wanted to bring up.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. Madam City Clerk, as far as putting, and then I will get to Councilmember Martinez, who had her hand up. When I get, Madam City Clerk, as far as public comments, it's my understanding everyone should or needs to fill out a public comment card. Is that correct or no?
No, that's not a requirement. It's usually just for convenience and to have contact information or know how to address someone when we call them up.
Okay.
But it's completely voluntary and it says so on the card.
Well, I would think that we would need to change that in the policy then, just to stipulate that.
Okay, if I may respond, Mayor Pro Tem Rue,
Yes.
on the three items that were raised by Councilmember Lopez. The water issue actually is already, I believe, a rule that they're not to bring water bottles and other containers in the skate park because they litter them and they become an obstacle for the skaters. And it's a intention to keep those items out of there so that they do not become those obstacles and that they do not ride their skates on them and trip them. If you go by the skate park when it is being used, you will regularly see water bottles that are distributed randomly around the concrete surface. So it's already a prohibition. They can keep the water bottles outside of the skate park and go out there and drink the water anytime that they want, or they can keep them in their backpacks and then take their backpack, which they put on the side against the fencing, and they can go outside the skate park to retrieve the water out of their backpacks and then drink out of there. I understand certainly that you want to be able to provide an opportunity for them to have refreshment, but the idea really is that because they litter and throw the bottles anywhere that they want, including outside the skate park area and particularly in the youth center area, which is constantly being littered with trash and other debris by the users of the skate park. The effort here is to try and eliminate and reduce not only the accumulation of trash, but the distribution of the debris in a way that prevents a hazard to the skaters themselves. The social distancing issue in the council chambers, I certainly understand your comments, and we certainly would not have any objection to limiting individuals from the same household, as well certainly as a parent with their child. But the intent there was mostly to prevent people from outside a household from congregating in seats that would prevent the city from providing a adequate social distancing space between members of outside of respective households. Then in relation to the written request, the comment was already addressed by the city clerk. However, I think that in this particular instance, the idea is to keep people from speaking directly to the city council member unless they've submitted a request under COVID-19 emergency rules. I think that it's provided that we can certainly allow them to respond to the city council on issues, just as you're seeing tonight. But when they are in the city council chambers itself, the desire is to have them submit a written request rather than to just start speaking out, particularly without a face cover. But if the council wants to abandon that requirement, we certainly can do that.
Does that answer your question, Councilmember Lopez?
No, it addresses the questions. Yes, I appreciate the comments. Real quickly, because I did forget one point. The mayor alluded to parks being open, and I fully concur and support him in that. At this past Easter event, just 2 days ago, the mayor and I were greeting attendees as they were coming into the parking lot. We had multiple families ask us when the parks are going to be open. We had families begging us to vote to open them. And so we have definitely a segment of our population that want to utilize them, get their kids active, get themselves active. Like the mayor stated earlier, other cities around us have them open. I think we're actually one of the few cities that still have them restricted. And in addition to that, when members are in the public are in the building here at City Hall or any of the city buildings, not saying that staff is going to do this, but I just want a reminder. I'd like for us to approach things with an open hand instead of a clenched fist, and treat the public, if they're not abiding by certain guidelines, that they kindly remind them to and educate them, as opposed to admonishing them and calling them out and embarrassing them with others in the building. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. Councilmember Martinez, you did have your hand raised. Do you, I notice it's down now. Did you have a comment?
I did, yeah. I had a question. I was curious about the outdoor basketball, but I realize now that that's considered a moderate contact sport, so I understand. And I just want to make a quick comment for any caregivers that are bringing the children to the parks. If we do vote in favor of reopening them, it is still so important to sanitize those little hands before and after they play on the playground, and to have those kids wearing their mask, because they're touching all the surfaces of the equipment. And if we're going to reopen, we're going to have, I imagine, a lot of kids enjoying the park in this warm weather that we're going to have.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. Before I call for a vote, are there any other comments? Mayor Dutray? Okay. I would just like to comment that in any reopening, I would expect the public to wear face coverings. It's a simple ask. It's for your protection and the protection of others around you. So that's simple. If you're in the park, I would hope you're going to have a face covering on. I hope you will protect your children. I hope you will respect our city employees, no matter where they are, when performing city business. You'll respect them by wearing a face covering. I wear one all the time. I go through a lot of hand sanitizer. I believe fully that we are all in this together. I realize there are some that say it's personal freedom, it's my choice. But they're the same ones who will tell us as a council about speed limits in the city and reducing them in this area or that area. If it's a personal choice to wear a face covering, then and because you know best, then it becomes a personal choice how fast you drive in our city, and I don't agree with that. I would concur we need to be gentle with people, but you have repeat offenders they need to understand. It is not do as you choose. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Wear a face covering. If tomorrow they say it's over, I intend to continue to wear face coverings for the foreseeable future. With that, we have a motion by Mayor Dutray, a second by, was it Councilmember Lopez or
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Johnson? Councilmember Lopez. Madam City Clerk, and it was to adopt facilities reopening protocols and practices as provided for herein in compliance with the city facilities reopening health and safety plan. Madam City Clerk, please call for the vote. I call for the vote. Madam City Clerk, the roll call.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Martinez,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue,
Aye.
Mayor Dutre.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes 5-0. That brings us to item number 11. Council workshop, a presentation on potential pension and infrastructure bonds. And I understand, Madam City Clerk, that there may be a change of the date on this.
Yes, staff is requesting that this be scheduled for either April 20 or 22nd at 6:00 p.m.
So April 20th would be a Tuesday. April 22nd would be a Thursday. Is there a preference from the council?
I'm looking for my calendar as we speak.
Mayor Dutre, I know you have some conflicts coming up in April. Which date works best for you?
I gave my date to staff already by email.
Okay,
I'm sorry, that was the 22nd, and what was the second date?
April 20th, which is a Tuesday, April 22nd, which is a Thursday. If my calendar is correct.
Yeah.
Either one of those dates works for me.
Okay,
Same here.
so why don't we look at April 20th at 6 p.m. Does that work for everybody?
That works for everybody, yeah.
Yes.
If that's a Tuesday, yeah, that'll work, as long as staff provides the tacos.
Madam City Clerk, is the 20th compatible with your schedule?
Yes.
Okay, so let's look at April 20th at 6 p.m. for the workshop. That brings us to communication. No department reports. We do have a closed session item scheduled for tonight right after this meeting. And I would request probably a 5-minute break for everybody in between to get everything set up anyway. City Manager, Executive Director, is there any thing to report?
I will post my COVID update on the city's website and put copies in council member boxes.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. That brings to the mayor. Mayor Dutre, did you want to talk about that? I guess I should. One, we have an announcement of vacancies for the Planning Commission. There are 2 vacancies, and we have 3 vacancies on our Community Activities Commission. All those who are interested may contact our city clerk for the application and more information on that.
Applications are actually also available on the city's website.
Okay, and they're on the city's website. That's good to know for those in the public who are interested, and you must be a resident of Montclair. That brings us to council member and directors. I will start off. Excuse me, the first item I'd like to mention tonight is just an idea I have. And I will need to talk to staff a little bit more about this. I briefly mentioned it to Mayor Dutre. Once we're out of the pandemic, we have a large manufacturing, not a large, but we have a substantial manufacturing sector in the city of Montclair. Across California, manufacturers are looking for places to go. Some of them have had to leave where they are because of high costs. Others have had to leave because of other issues in communities. I'd like to see us, and I'm going to check with a couple of other entities in Southern California, but I'd like to see if we might be able to do something. It's an idea called Made in Montclair. We would look at our manufacturing sector, find out those products that are made in Montclair. I understand retail is suffering. I understand restaurants, hospitality, and others, but I'm specifically focusing on manufacture because manufacturing pays generally very good wages. Those are wages that are then spent in this community. We would look at the different manufacturing sectors. What's made in Montclair? What do they need? For example, somebody may be manufacturing steel shelving, but the bolts they need are not manufactured in Montclair. They have to order them from somewhere else. Maybe we can find a bolt manufacturer that would want to be here. It's just a thought to look at trying to find a way to bring manufacturing into this community because it's an important component of our economy. But I will talk to staff about that in the future. It's just a thought. I commend staff for coming up with the money to do a roundabout on Howard and Ramona. Certainly it will slow the speed limit down. One cautionary item for the people who live in that area, who drive through that area, be very cautious in the roundabout. Some communities that have put them in wound up taking them out because of collisions and things like that. So once it is installed, please be careful because rear end collisions do happen. On Saturday, we had a wonderful event here in the city. It was our first drive-through Easter event, almost an Easter parade. I want to thank the Community Activities Commission, our commissioners, Arturo Padilla, Richard Escalante, Alex Hernandez, Darlene Ferraro, Diane Wells, Rosa Rangel, and Lori Milheiser for their dedication and their volunteerism that day. Also our council members, Mayor Dutre, Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Martinez, Councilmember Lopez, all helped out. And it was necessary because we had a big visit by the Easter Bunny. Now, everybody on CAC and the council members know the Easter Bunny. And we were very pleased that he was able to be here in Montclair for a few hours on his busiest weekend. We know that he spent a lot of time here in Montclair and loves our families and our children. He also said that he was very pleased that we had the live rabbits. And Mrs. Johnson, I know you got to hold a few of the live rabbits, didn't you?
No, I didn't hold them. I did get close and pet them when somebody else was holding them.
I couldn't remember, but I know you were very much enjoying them. And the Easter Bunny said he appreciates that we emphasize being kind to animals, and that is very important. I want to thank the staff for their efforts. It was wonderful. I also want to thank the Kiwanis for their pancake breakfast. They actually ran out of food. They had to refund some people their money. Several of us, I know many on this call, made a donation. We didn't expect food. It's just a donation to a great, great cause. It was a wonderful event. And I think it was great to see all the young people there. I know Councilmember Martinez, you had your little one with you. Everybody has great memories of Easter Bunny, and I appreciate all the effort everybody does. I, with sadness, note many of the various tragedies that have happened across this nation, including another attack on an officer at our nation's capital. I want to thank all the first responders, both public safety and in the medical profession. They are so important in what they do for us. I would remind people about coronavirus inoculations. We talked about that earlier. It's very much open. In fact, today, a friend of mine resides here in Montclair, went online and made an appointment. He was able to get one tomorrow at the Fairplex. Some other friends of mine who live in San Antonio Heights, they made an appointment and they were sent over to the Speedway in Fontana. It's based on when there is availability. It's myturn.ca.gov. Great way to get your coronavirus inoculation. I would encourage everybody to receive one. Don't fear. The AMC Theater is open. Please, if you have an opportunity, go and see a movie. Just enjoy it. There is distancing involved and limited seating, but it's a great opportunity, especially in the summertime, to see the many movies, great family activity. I do want to congratulate Xavier Mendez, who has retired. I think he did a great job while he's here, and we wish him well. The Ontario Montclair School District now has a Mandarin dual immersion program in both Mandarin and English. I think that it's wonderful. And it shows certainly a new direction with the school district. The more languages you know, the better off you'll be. If you're interested, you can call 909-445-1062, and the Ontario Montclair District can enroll you. I will note a few passings. One of them, Beverly Cleary. You might say, who is Beverly Cleary? She's an author who died at the age of 104. She would have been 105 this April 12th. Her books have sold 91 million copies since 1950. Many of you will know her characters: Henry Huggins, his dog Ribsy, Beezus and Ramona Quimby, and Ralph S. Mouse. All of their adventures on Klickitat Street. What does she have to tie into our region? Beverly Cleary attended and graduated from Chaffey College. At the time, Chaffey College was located at the same facility as Chaffey High School on Euclid Avenue. She also worked at the Ontario Library, which was then located much closer to Chaffey College. She actually would leave her classes at Chaffey College, walk to the Ontario Library, and that's where she began her interest in writing books for young people. She said she based her first book, Henry Huggins, on a question from a child when she worked in a library. Now, she never said which library, and she worked in many of them. I would hope it was the Ontario Library. She certainly influenced me. As a child growing up, I loved the book Ribsy. I loved dogs. I loved reading. It was the perfect combination. And yes, to this day, I still have that book. Her birthday is April 12th, and that has been declared as National Drop Everything and Read Day. So please, on April 12th, pick up a book and read. I want to extend from our council our condolences to Carlos Garcia, the council member in the city of Upland, who recently lost his sister to the ravages of coronavirus. And we certainly extend our sympathy to him. Also tonight, we have a resolution from our council, and we will adjourn. Let me pull the resolution here. We will adjourn in the memory of Chino City Council member Mark Hargrove. Mr. Hargrove died recently. He was a 1982 graduate of Chino High School. He served in the U.S. Air Force from 1983 to 1987. He worked for 30 years with the Department of Corrections, 20 of them in the city of Chino at CIM. When he retired in 2017, he was appointed to the Planning Commission of the city of Chino, and in 2018, he was duly elected to the council. He served as the city's representative to the Santa Ana Watershed Authority, the Citizens Advisory Committee for the California Institute for Men and Women, and he was a member of the Chino Valley Unified School District Measure G Oversight Committee and served as a board member for the Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce. Councilmember Hargrove was a dedicated member of the Chino community. He loved his community, and indeed he loved the region. And we will adjourn tonight in his memory. That brings me to Councilmember Johnson. Your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just have a couple of quick things. One, I just want to concur with you regarding the event that was the Easter event that was held this past weekend. You know, I'm always so impressed how city staff can turn a parking lot into a whole different thing. Their creativity astounds me every time. I should be used to it now. They've done it so well so many times. But we didn't feel like we were in a parking lot. Personally, I thought I was at a party because the music was loud and there was dancing going on. But there was a lot of laughing and smiling. Even the butterflies, we had a male and female butterfly that were just, I was just enchanted by them. I couldn't stop looking. It was just fascinating. Everyone did a fabulous job. Again, thank you to the CAC and to the Kiwanis and the staff. Everybody did a fabulous job, and I'm really proud to be in Montclair to see that kind of event happen. Well done by everyone. The second quick thing I have is I believe that for 2020 was a horrible year for COVID. A lot of people lost their loved ones. But I recently found out that FEMA is reimbursing people who had to pay for funeral expenses in 2020. And I believe the reimbursement rate is up to $9,000. So the way that you apply for that is you go onto the FEMA website, fema.gov, and there is an area that explains the reimbursement. There is no online application, but there is a telephone number. So if you call the telephone number, then someone will guide you through the process of being reimbursed. You'll have to, of course, have the receipts and documents of the funeral, but you can be reimbursed for funeral expenses for 2020. That's all I have tonight. I wish everyone well.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Martinez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rue. I wanted to comment on the butterflies too. You beat me to it. I couldn't help but laugh. They were so energetic and they danced the entire time. And I was exhausted just standing there. So my goodness, they must be younger than me or something. But that was just such a beautiful event. And after this last year of, not really being able to get together for those sorts of events, it's those things that really make you realize how amazing our little city is. We had human services, we had the CAC, we had Montclair after school program, public works, police and fire. We had everyone there. We had everyone participate. I was there representing the women's club, and there were a bunch of smiling faces and happy residents, a long line of happy residents. But I did think of one thing, unfortunately, a little too late. I'm not sure if it's possible or if it's something that we do, and I just don't know, but we do share on social media a flyer whenever we have these sorts of events. And I was just wanting to make a suggestion, if possible, to create an event page, if that's something we haven't already looked into. Because the benefit of that is, let's say I select on the Montclair page that I wanted or that I'm interested in this event, it'll give me reminders of the event. So I think some of our residents might benefit from that. So if they're not too good at calendaring and remembering things, then, not that we don't already have enough of our residents showing up, but I think it would always be
Councilmember
good.
Martinez, we can make sure to add that on the Instagram for the next event.
Cool, thank you. That'd be awesome. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I do have quite a bit of items. I will try to go quickly. I know I've done most of the talking tonight. I apologize for keeping everybody here a little longer than they expected, but I'll piggyback on the Easter extravaganza comments. I publicly thanked Marsha Richter from Human Services and her department for coordinating and putting the event on, our police officers that showed up and did traffic control, and the cadets that helped on the sidewalks, public works that showed up to open up the facilities and maintain the grounds, firefighters, engineer Baeza, engineer Mistretta, firefighter Chapman for helping the Kiwanis members serve those pancake breakfasts to all those that attended. A special plug for firefighter Chapman, one of our newest guys. That guy is great with kids and great with being a public face for our city. Kudos to him, very much appreciated. I hope he stays with us and then he goes far. To our community activities commissioners for all showing up. Even one of our members showed up with a broken arm, and that shows commitment.
Darlene Ferraro.
Thank you, sir. The name eluded me. I do know who she is. The name eluded me right now. I'm trying to rush.
That's okay.
Last week, bumped into Public Works employee by the name of Ricky, met him for the first time. He was actually in the alley where we live, patching up the graffiti that the infamous vandal, if you will, that goes by the moniker Tree, had damaged one of our residents' fences. It was great to see him out there cleaning all that up. I very much am appreciative. Kudos to the Public Works Department. Incidentally, that same day that he was cleaning up the markings left by that vandal, Montclair police had announced that that vandal by the name of Tree was caught and was put in jail and will be charged with several felonies for damages that exceeded $10,000 in damages to private and public property. I hope he is still locked up. That being said, I know I've had residents ask me for the past month and a half to 2 months about his particular markings. I appreciate Montclair PD for staying on it the past month and 2 months. Thank you to Sergeant Manook. Thank you to Chief Avels for the updates that you were giving me. Very much appreciated. And excellent work. I'm thrilled. And then you also had another successful arrest with respect to a child sexual predator in town. So thank you, Montclair PD. You're doing more with less, and we are very much appreciate it. I attended a March 31st fundraiser at Los Portales to help Buena Vista Arts Integrated School. I hope that the school raised the funds that they need for their program and their operations. Let's see here. Thank you, Noel Castillo, for writing the grant that helped secure the funding for the roundabout. I appreciate what you and your staff have done with respect to the Howard and Ramona intersection and addressing some of the concerns that residents have been bringing up over the past year and a half to 2 years. Thank you so much for staying on it. Let's see, regarding Council Member Hargrove, I appreciate, I actually had asked the city manager and the mayor to agendize or put that on our agenda that we adjourn in his memory. I knew Mark since 2018. We both were running for city council. Obviously him and Chino, me here in Montclair. The man, moment he gets elected, he gets hit with the battle and the decision, or not the decision, the diagnosis rather, that he had colon cancer. And for 2.5 years, he fought with every fiber of his being, never complained. No what ifs, no doubts, just always living each day to the fullest. And he attended his council meetings. Granted, in an era of COVID, he did it through Zoom, but he was there. And his voice was either there. I've been in the Chino council chambers and you hear his voice audibly come in the building because he was still active, even though he was fighting for his life. I commend the man. I will miss him. I know the people of Chino will miss him. My condolences to the Chino council, to the people of Chino, and most importantly to his family. God be with them, God comfort them at this difficult time. And that also reminds me, I saw a public post on Facebook that Don Vadvarka's son had posted that services for Mr. Vadvarka are in the works and that they will be happening soon. I know the mayor had posted a comment that he'd like to know when the date for that would happen. I know that we adjourned in Mr. Vadvarka's memory back in January, I believe, or February. But if we can, at the time of those services, present a formal gift and presentation to the family on behalf of the city, I'd appreciate it. I think he deserves it, given all his many years to this city as a founding member of this city, actually, and his many years on the Planning Commission. And then also, if the city can, if we can do a formal recognition of some kind for Xavier Mendez, who our council members have alluded to his service to the city, as well as a form of thanks for all the years in service that he gave. Once again, for members of the public, we will have a 55-hour lane closure again, starting Friday, April 9th at 9 p.m. through Monday, April 12th at 5 a.m. 2 lanes of the 10 freeway eastbound will be closed from Monte Vista to Central. So from the 9th through the 12th, from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., 2 lanes of the 10 freeway will be closed from Monte Vista to Central. Please make different travel plans if you are out and about during those hours. It'd be appreciated. There will be congestion as you can imagine. If you have any questions regarding the closures, I can provide them to you by calling the council office at 909-625-9401. 909-625-9401. Let's see here. I'm going to request, please, at the next council meeting that that we include an item on the agenda to take an opposed position on Senate Bill 9 that is before the legislature. Our neighboring city to the east, the city of Ontario, has contacted and reached out to us, asking us to join them in an opposition position regarding the bill. It does limit local control. It takes away our authority to delineate and regulate the housing and housing classifications. So I can provide this information to staff. I know Mayor Dutray had brought this up to my attention as well. I'd like for us to take a position on that. And finally, just a brief comment for Chief Avels. Thank you, sir, for being responsive to requests from myself I appreciate you looking into the shower clogging issue at the fire station. And it's great to hear that Public Works will be submitting a budget item to address the repair of that, hopefully in the next budget. And I appreciate the word from Public Works that they will be meeting with police and fire staff regarding the heating and AC unit in both of their facilities, both of them across the street. So thank you for the responsiveness and the attentiveness to that, Chief and staff. I appreciate it. With that, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I conclude my comments.
Thank you. And Mayor Dutre, do you have any comments tonight?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Mayor.
First of all, at the April 19th meeting, I'm not going to be attending that meeting. I will be flying back, visiting some colleges with my daughter on that day of the meeting. So it'll just be you four council members without myself for that meeting. I just want again just to recognize the importance of everybody getting vaccinated. And there's plenty of open reservation vaccinations right now available at the Ontario Convention Center and other semi-county vaccination sites. If you go to the website for sbcovid19.com, you'll be able to find a vaccination appointment. And I appreciate the fact that in terms of regarding employees, I think it's best that for as far as employees who retire, I think the employees themselves, staff themselves, usually have special events, and let's just let the staff and the city manager handle those without council asking for to recognize certain employees. I think all employees who retire are important to the city of Montclair, not certain ones. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to closed session announcement. We do have a closed session directly following this meeting. We also will have a personnel committee meeting following the closed session. I would ask that once we adjourn, we have a 5-minute break so we can take care of arranging everything. And so we will adjourn this meeting tonight. We will adjourn in the memory of Council Member Mark Hargrove. And we will adjourn to the meeting of April 19th, 2020. Thank you.